All right, so I will go ahead and get started. Thank you guys for joining me today. I'm going to share my screen because I have a presentation to go through. So I asked you guys to submit questions. No one did, which is totally fine because what I did, I basically looked at some of you all's pages that signed up and just kind of saw like what questions you were having in other conversations, and then some of you guys tagged us in posts as well, and so I just pulled from those posts. So if you do have questions, there's a little like raise hand button that you can use, and hopefully I see it. I save some time. Hopefully at the end I get a little excited, I talk a lot sometimes, where you can just like message a question in the chat. So hopefully everyone's used Zoom. I'm pretty sure because of COVID, we've all used Zoom multiple times a day. So just do that, raise your hand, either virtually, because I probably won't see you when I do the presentation, or just put it in the chat as well. All right. Give me a thumbs up if you can see my screen. Perfect. All right, so first of all, my name is Lee. So I'm one of the co-founders of Blogger Exchange. I always think it's important because I see a lot of new faces, which I'm super excited about. I think that's one good thing about these virtual events. I get to meet more of you guys from across the country, just not in the cities we operate in. So I've been blogging for about 10 years now, just so for blogging background on me. My handle's Lovely Love. You don't have to follow me. But what I do for my full-time job, so I work for a retailer, the largest retailer in the country, and I do all of their social and influencer marketing. So it's really fun when it's fun, but I will use recent examples. So when COVID hit, I was working 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. I was working on the weekends because essentially we had to figure out how we were going to communicate with our customers about what we were doing internally, how we were addressing COVID. The same thing happened last week when everything happened with George Floyd. We had to say, look at our organic social, look at our paid social. We had to decide when we would pause, how long we would pause for, what content we would start sharing again, what those communications would look like. So I'll kind of take you through all those processes. So one thing that's like super important that I always teach people through Blogger Exchange, if you've never thought of your blog as a brand before, your social media channels as a brand before, I think this is the time to start doing that. So what I'm going to give you, hopefully you'll start thinking about your blog that way, because even though it's your personal page, it's still a brand, and you need to treat it as such, even when it comes to crises communications. So hopefully that's what you'll get from this conversation today. This is just a little bit more about Blogger Exchange. We've been doing this for 3 years. We usually do in-person events because we love to see people in person, but you know, for now we're doing virtual events. But we're really just about collaboration over competition. And I think our beginnings, you know, really relate to this topic we're going to discuss today. So we basically started Blogger Exchange because we were two Black women that did not see an inclusive space in Nashville. We weren't getting invited to a lot of events. And we were just like, why are we going to be sad over something that we know we can do a better job of? So we just decided to create our own space. We said, whether you're a woman, whether you have 30 followers, 3,000 followers, 300,000 followers, this is a space for you. So that's something we really promote is diversity, inclusion, no matter your niche, no matter your gender, your ethnicity. This is a space where we hope people can feel welcome. And so that is kind of like why we're doing this course today, because that from the beginning has been who we are. That hasn't changed. So we thought it was really important to have this conversation with you guys today. So I packed a lot in here for y'all. We're gonna go through some good stuff. We're gonna talk about first, like why we're all here. We have different reasons, but I think some of the underlying issues are the same. Just a brief history on Black Lives Matter, because I know that's kind of what brought us here. We're going to talk about some easy wins for you guys to do during this time, and then just the process moving forward. Once again, talk about those crisis communication tips. once again, if you have not thought about yourself as a brand before, I'm going to give you some ways to start thinking of yourself as a brand. And hopefully everything you start doing here forth will kind of show that to your followers and to your fans. We're going to talk about keeping commitment. I know a lot of you guys posted or were hesitant to post, and now you're kind of like, what do I do next? So we'll talk about that. And then integrating social good into your brand. Once again, I know some people are like, well, I'm a fashion blogger, I'm a food blogger. Like, does it make sense for me to keep having these conversations? The answer is yes. I'll give you some suggestions on how you can do that and do it in an authentic way. And then I have a little challenge for you guys at the end of this, just to keep it going, and then we'll do final thoughts and questions for that. All right, so I'm gonna dive right in. So first of all, I think it's very important. So we're gonna talk about Black Lives Matter, because that's what brought us all here, but I'm also gonna talk about other social injustices that you can potentially weave into your brand or that might pop up as crises over the next year. And we'll talk about tips and strategies for those. I do want to give a warning, and it's not a bad warning. I know that talking about race for some people is uncomfortable, which is why a lot of you guys are here, because you don't know how to talk about it. So we're going to talk about that. And just so you guys know, talking about race is perfectly fine as long as you're doing it in a positive way to educate people. And so hopefully after this, you feel open, you feel good to go and talk about race relations, talk about racial injustice, and you don't feel like that's not your place to talk about those things on your blog or on your channels. So I had to ask myself this question. Black Lives Matter was founded in 2013. So it was founded after Trayvon Martin was killed and George Zimmerman was acquitted for his murder. So that's why it was started. It was started by 3 Black queer women that really saw a need for this. But then you have to ask yourself, okay, this was 7 years ago almost, because it's pretty much almost July. And like, why are we just now all talking about this? Why did it kind of come to a fever pitch? And the reason for that, which I had to ask myself, I had to ask my friends as well, was essentially COVID-19. Just think of George Floyd died the day after Memorial Day on a Tuesday. And we all heard about it, but normally, like even myself, I was supposed to be in California at a music festival, living my best free Black girl magic life at a festival. A lot of y'all would have been on cruises, you would have been on the beach, you might have been resting at home. Basically, you wouldn't have been on social media. You probably also would not have been watching the news. So everyone was less distracted. Also, we just had more time where we were like, people were like, I can go out in March because I'm at home and doing these things. So just know that that kind of came to a fever pitch for that reason. And I wanted to start out with that so you can think about, once again, all the other Black lives that have been lost in the same manner. They've been filmed in the same manner. They've been shared on social media in the same manner. But people didn't have the time to care, or they were just too busy to even see it on their feeds. And so as much as COVID-19 has sucked, for me personally, I do see it as a positive. You know, when people say, oh my God, 2020 is the worst year ever, I'm kind of like, actually 2020 was the year that made us all kind of stop, slow down a little bit and say, I need to focus on what's really important for my family, for myself, and just at the world broader. So just kind of remember that was the reason for us being here today. But we know COVID, you know, things are starting to open up again. And, you know, hopefully soon in the next, you know, few months, next year, there's going to be some kind of vaccine. But just because you kind of return to your normal life or whatever your new normal is, don't forget this. Don't forget this time that you've had right now, because you still need to keep speaking out, still need to keep fighting. Even if you get busier again, you start traveling again, all those things. So just remember, we're not always going to be in this COVID world, but you can still make time for Black Lives Matter or whatever other issue is very important to you. So I think the biggest question a lot of people had and they waited or didn't post or were on the edge of posting was, is it my place to post? The answer is yes. It is always your place to speak out on, social injustices if that's something that you're passionate about. But I think what's important is that you keep the focus on the issue at hand, and you also have to directly address it. I did see a lot of posts, and these were some of the people that were getting called out, where they never said Black Lives Matter, or they never specifically said George Floyd. They kind of skirted around the issue. They said we're all in this together. They said we all need to hold hands, which is true, but that doesn't necessarily help the situation. So you can share your thoughts on the impact of the victims in their community, and you can infuse your opinion while not taking the intention away from the issue. And I'll show you a couple of examples coming up. But just remember, like, avoiding difficult discussions and conversations doesn't make them go away. It's just like avoiding doing the dishes in your sink. They're just going to keep piling up until it keeps smelling and you no longer can ignore it. And that's pretty much what happened when we saw George Floyd. And so it's better to just directly address it, move on, and kind of be done with it. I love this image right here of elephant in the room. This is how I think about, the issues of Black Lives Matter and the issues of police brutality in American society over the past few years. People usually don't address like the trunk of the elephant, which is the big thing that's in the room. Some people will try to divert, try to avoid it. They're reluctant to talk about it. They're awkward when they talk about it. They're not well versed on the situation, so they may come off as ignorant. But you can avoid all these things once we go through these crisis communication tips. Just always know everyone sees the elephant in the room. It's just best to address it and address it head on, so that elephant just becomes smaller and then the elephant moves out of the room as well. So I pulled a couple of quotes that I liked, because once again, another question people had was, how do I talk about something without bringing attention to myself or making it about me? And I think these are some quotes, and you can go visit their profiles. Their posts are still up, but Nashville Lifestyle, she said, I know I have a platform, and what good is that platform if I'm staying silent against injustice? And then she went into how she was going to donate, how other people could donate, some books that she was getting educated on, what she was going to do over the next week or so. She was going to amplify Black voices on her page. She talked once again from her perspective. She talked about how she felt, but she really kept the attention on the issue. It wasn't about me. It was just about how I can help. And then I like this other one. I will never know what it's like to be persecuted because of the color of my skin. The one thing that I know is there comes a time when silence is betrayal. And then once again, she did the same thing where she shared how she was doing research. She encouraged other people to do research, what she had learned by talking to other people. And then she talked about how she was going to amplify Black voices. Once again, I think these are good examples of you're still giving your perspective, you're still sharing how you feel, but you're not taking away from the issue, and you're not diverting attention from that. So I think these are good examples if you've been struggling with the words to say. These are really good examples. Once again, they have multiple posts on their platforms, which I think is something else we can talk about. But I would definitely encourage you to go visit these two platforms. And they also have started posting other content, but they did make a commitment with their other content to keep posting about Black Lives Matter and keep amplifying Black voices as well. So did want to address again why a lot of people were afraid to post, and this is whether you're white, Black, Latina, Asian. So a lot of people have been taught that talking about race is a bad thing, but it's not. Now, saying racist things, that's bad. But when you talk about race, when you're trying to educate people, eliminate racism, that's a very positive thing. Once again, like, you cannot be educated on something that you never discuss, or you never read about, or you never listen to topics about. So once again, when you think about like, why did I not know about like Black Lives Matter and all these issues? It's because you never talked about it. And so like, that's a very easy place to start, is like reading, researching, listening to podcasts about this, listening to videos about this, because the more you listen to it, the more you allow yourself to be in these conversations, the less you'll have fear about having these conversations. You know, it's just like doing anything that you're starting new. It feels very foreign when you first start it. You feel a little bit awkward when you first start it, but you know, after 2, 3 conversations, you'll feel more comfortable talking about race and talking about racial relations in the US. So, you know, definitely start slow, whatever pace you need to start yourself at. But once again, you can't learn if you do not try to engage in conversations, read things, and listen to other people. So a couple of simple things as it relates to Black Lives Matter. So these are things you can do and you can share with your followers to do. Donate to an organization doing the work. Movements need money. And if you're thinking about like, how can I continue this? I think it's just like any organization. So if you donate to any cause, they usually give you the options of like, make a one-time donation, but really they try to encourage you like make a monthly donation or a yearly donation or whatever that is. And that's because they have work to do. And $5 is great up front, but if you're able to do $5 a quarter, that's great. So that's just something simple. Like every month you can say like, hey, you guys, I donated another $5. You should too. That's super simple, easy to do. Sign a petition and keep signing relevant petitions. So I think most of you guys probably signed the George Floyd petition or you signed the petition for Breonna, but just know that there are hundreds of other Black Lives Matter petitions out there. The reason there are hundreds is because we know, once again, this issue has been going on for decades in this country, that there is going to be another Black man or woman or child that is killed on video by a police officer in this country. And they're going to become a hashtag, unfortunately, and they're going to become a name on a petition. We know that's going to happen. And so another simple thing you can do is, once again, signing those petitions. Spread the message on your social media channels. You know, when you think about Ahmaud, he was killed in February, but his killers were not arrested until May. The reason his killers were not arrested until May was because no one knew about it. You know, his killers released the video because they thought they had gotten away from it. And then, you know, everyone kept sharing, everyone kept signing the petition, calling for their arrest, and they got arrested. It doesn't seem like you're doing much when you share and educate people on these things, but it does do a lot. The more people that say this is wrong, these people need to be arrested, change needs to be happen, you will see that change happens. Like, you know, there's always strength in numbers. So it seems so small sharing a petition on your social media channels, but literally it's something that could save someone's life. And so it's simple, but it does make a big impact. So if you feel like, hey, that's not enough, it really is. So once again, it's so important. I know a lot of people have started kind of calling out people. And if you get called out, just keep going. It's fine. You'll get called out for lots of things as being a blogger and being on social media. So, but just remember, so Black Lives Matter, it's not a trend. You know, although it's trending on Twitter, it's trending on Instagram, it's all over the news. It's not like a cute, fun trend. It really is about saving lives. And so I think what people are looking for, if you've been called out, they're looking for a permanent commitment. Once again, George Floyd is just one. And so they're looking for you. If you made the statement, Black Lives Matter, they're like, okay, like, are you on board? Are you going to continue posting? So just a few things you can think about, and you have to decide what's right for your blog and what's right for your brand. But share on your feed in addition to your stories. If you do share on your stories, make a highlight. I would just call it Black Lives Matter, social justices, whatever you want to call it. But people just want to see like, oh man, she posted like 50 things, you know, June 1st through 7th. And then they go back to your page on June 30th and they're like, what happened to the black square? She archived it. What happened to the muted square? It's gone. I can't find any of that information she shared about the petitions. Basically, people just want to know you're kind of in it for the long haul and you weren't forced into posting. And if you felt like you were forced into posting, I think we'll talk about this a little bit later, but you really have to evaluate your personal commitment to this cause and to other causes. Follow Black organizations and content creators. You can, once again, this goes back to educating yourselves. Black Lives Matter, they have an Instagram page. If you haven't, I would encourage you to follow them. So does the NAACP. These are just easy organizations to help amplify their voices by giving them more followers and making them more visible to people, and sharing their profiles as well. And then use your platform to amplify Black voices. A lot of people have asked, okay, I feel like I did the whole June 1st through 7th meeting myself. Is that enough? Nah, not really. Once again, keep doing what you're doing and show that permanent commitment. And permanent for you may be once a week, permanent for you may be once a month, once a quarter. But you have to decide, once again, for your brand, what permanence looks like and what consistency looks like. It's the same thing for anything else you do on your blog. If you are a beauty blogger, but you never blog about beauty, people are like, is she really a beauty blogger? I never see her. She's always at the beach and posting swimsuits. It's the same thing with this. You have to be consistent so people know that you show up and you actually care. So your audience definitely wants you to, be vulnerable. They want to hear your voice. And a lot of people said they didn't have the words, but it's really important to use your own words and share your own thoughts. It's the same thing with anything else that you do on your blog. And we'll talk about it a little bit later, but the way I would treat this content is the same way you would treat other content, which is literally to sit down, sketch it out, bullet point it, outline it, write out your post, go back to your post after a day, feel comfortable, edit, tweak it, and then you post it. You don't have to do something right in the minute, in the moment, but really I would treat this content as any other content and just take your time and plan it. When it feels right for you to post, you'll know, and you can post at that time. People aren't always looking for a super immediate thing, especially if the immediate thing is not well thought out. You can definitely see, because I'll send out some links after, there were a lot of brands that just thought that they could put up like a black and white hand being held together, and they're like, Black Lives Matter, and that's great. And people called them out because they were like, did you even have a meeting on this? Like, did you just Google some kind of image that was like a $5 stock photo? Like, no, you need to have a conversation on this and plan this out. And it's the same thing for you. So just some things to remember, during this time, definitely keep the focus on Black Americans and content creators. Once again, we have been raised in a country where people kind of feel like talking about race is a bad thing. And once again, as long as you're talking about race in a positive manner, it's not a bad thing. But you have to refer to people in their preferred terms. Black Lives Matter is called Black Lives Matter for a reason. That's how a good chunk of Americans that are Black identify. African Americans, more of like a corporate term. I've seen a lot of people, and I will tell you, so my dad is a former professor at Tennessee State University for African American history. He also writes book on Tennessee and African American history. So I'm super well versed in academic terms. I saw all these people saying BIPOC, and I had to ask him, and I also had to ask my friends, I was like, what does BIPOC mean? And they were like, oh, Black Indigenous people of color. And I was like, oh, but they're talking about Black people. I was like, that's kind of weird. And I think some people did it to try to be politically correct. But I will say, once again, I'm not speaking for all Black people, but most Black people just want to be called Black. That's why it's called Black Lives Matter. If you look at the signs, you will rarely see anyone that said BIPOC. Most people were not saying African American Lives Matter. It's okay to say Black. So just really, if you're talking about Black people, just say Black. Now, if you are talking about all people of color, I think it's okay to use that term or use POC. But once again, if you're just talking about Black people, just say Black. these are things that are just, they seem small, but they make a huge difference in the way it comes off to the people you're trying to reach. And just know sometimes when you use those terms as an influencer, another influencer might see them and then they start using it and so forth. And then the next thing you know, it's called BIPOC Lives Matter. And we're just like, how did that happen? So just be careful of things like that. Once again, you can just look on other people's pages. Literally about 2 days ago, there was a lot of posts from Black content creators that it said, I'm a Black man, I'm a Black woman, and it shared their Black experiences and why they're proud to be Black. And what they said was Black man, Black woman. And so if you look at those things, that will kind of educate you on how other people are talking about it and then how you should talk about it too. So these are just super key, easy things. Research, listen, ask, and act. So research is very key. Read online news articles from credible sources because a lot of people, there's blogs and opinion pieces, but CNN's like a really great one. I think that's well trusted. Also read think pieces. Once again, CNN, some of these other news stations, they allow content creators to, write their own personal experiences, and read books written by Black authors. Once again, we have a lot of downtime. I'll share out some links, but there's some great, books that you can read. But research is like super key. And this isn't just for Black Lives Matter. This is for any social issues. So you make sure that you're speaking about it, not sounding ignorant, you're using the correct terms, things like that. Listen, once again, like I said, if you go back and look at some Black content creators, a lot of them shared their like personal stories this week, entitled, I'm a Black man or I'm a Black woman. Read those stories, see what their personal experiences have been, because it will just help you empathize a little bit more, and also just understand different perspectives too. Like, even for me, I have to read Black men's experiences because although I know, my father's Black, my brothers, my nephews, some men I date are Black, I still don't walk in their shoes. So it's still important for me to learn their perspectives as well. Have a conversation with a trusted Black friend and acquaintance to understand their perspective. Something important that I've heard a lot this week is make sure the person you're asking is someone that you feel comfortable with and is not out of the blue, because once again, you should talk to them after researching so they don't feel like they're having to educate you on things that can easily like be Googled or can like easily be found in a book. It's more so you're trying to learn from their personal experience, not having them teach you the history of Black Lives Matter. Ask if you have additional questions after you've thoroughly researched, ask them, have a coffee with them, do a face chat with them, a phone call with them, wherever that may be. After you've done all those things, you feel like you've internalized it, you've learned, you have all the info you need, you feel well informed, that's when you go act. You basically create a plan of action for your blog and for your brand, and create one also if you, once again, you have to determine what your level of commitment is. If you're like, okay, this is something I want to infuse in my blog, super great. If you're like, I'm really about that life and I'm going to become a Black Lives Matter advocate, also think of ways you can enact change in your professional life too, and then put those plans into action over time. Just like any other habit you form or any other habit you're trying to break, it takes time. So when you're like creating those plans of action, start small, things I can do this week, things I can do this month, things I can do over the year, and really create action steps, and also hold yourself accountable. Like create a checklist of, okay, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of the month in June. Set a reminder on your phone for July 1st where you go back and look and say, did I actually follow through with what I said I was going to do? Write it down, type it in an email it to yourself and open it up on July 1st, whatever works for you. But once again, just hold yourself accountable to what you promised and said that you were going to do. I wanted to share this. There's a lot to know. And you will see this now that Black Lives Matter has become more of a topic among all cultures in America, you'll start to see things that you might not have seen on your timeline before. So for example, Juneteenth is coming up. You'll probably see a lot of Black content creators post about Juneteenth. And that essentially is just the day that people celebrate the Emancipation Proclamation. They call it Freedom Day. Most Black people celebrate in the form of like getting together in some kind of community event, block party, hosting picnics, barbecues at the parks, things like that. Once again, this is a history that goes back 400 years. And just know that, and just know people are going to be celebrating that, and you might see that on your timeline. But once again, it goes back to research. This is a long stemming issue. And so just knowing those little things really just help you be more of an advocate and help you empathize more. So when you see your Black content creators posting on June 19th, you know why they're posting and you can support them with that post. Okay, so getting into crisis communications. So basically a crisis is an event that occurs suddenly and usually unexpectedly, but if you are good at what you do as a brand, you kind of already go ahead and plan for different crises. It demands a quick response, which is why, once again, planning ahead is good. It's like the same thing for when you get renters and home insurance. Like, you never expect to have a fire, have a pipe burst, and have a flood, but you know those things can happen, so you get your renter's insurance and you're ready for it. Same thing if a tornado comes through your town, you know your exit plan to get to the bathroom or a safe space. It's kind of the same thing. If they're mismanaged, which a lot of brands mismanage this week, and they will be losing profits, it basically hurts your reputation. It hurts you because if a competitor did something better than you did, people might shift over to that competitor. This is the same for bloggers. And then it just has like decreased trust in your brand. People are like, why didn't they take the time to craft a better statement for this? Why was this not important enough for a meeting or for more thoughtfulness into their post? And so just know that those are all the things that can go wrong, which I know some people had those things go wrong this week. But the goal is you can redeem yourself. And if you just do a couple things, which we'll talk about, but also the goal is redeem yourself if you have to redeem yourself, which hopefully too many of you guys do not. And then when something else arises, you've learned from your mistakes, you go forward in a manner where you acknowledge those mistakes and you do much better the next time. That's always the goal. So you have to assess where you stand on issues and how they align with your brand. And this is important to do with the crises before it happens. So Black Lives Matter, I know it's been on a lot of people's minds, but you really do need to like sit down and say, like, is this something that's really important to me? The same with other social justice issues. And how important is it to me? Because I know something else that's happened for people is they've lost or they've gained followers. And so some people are like, oh man, is posting worth it? Because I might lose X number of followers, which for me is losing money with brands. It's something you have to figure out for yourself. Every person's answer is going to be different of I'm super passionate, I don't care how many followers I lose, or I care, but this is my livelihood and I can't not feed my kids or pay my mortgage. And you have to assess that on your own. So, America is definitely a society with a whole bunch of crises waiting to happen. So we know like Black Lives Matter, police brutality, that's kind of like the hot button topic right now. But you also have to think like mass shootings. Those happen all the time in America. And there's probably gonna be another mass shooting. This is America. And you have to think like, where do you stand on like gun issues? Because just know that like a mass shooting could happen tomorrow. And you have to say like, okay, if it's another Sandy Hook and everyone's talking about it, where do I stand on this issue? So if it does happen, I can speak on it and share my truth and share my perspective. Same thing with natural disasters. You might not seem like this could be a crisis, but think back to Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans. So although that, happened in New Orleans, it was like a national discussion. And the reason it was a national discussion is because they did not get the relief they needed because it was a predominantly Black city. And once again, people were speaking out, there was petitions to get them the relief they needed. And those are things you have to think about as well. Even when you think about cities like Flint, Michigan, that never got clean water, you have to figure out like where you stand on those issues. Flint, Michigan did not get clean water because it's a predominantly Black city. And so you have to once again think about those things, because you never know what's going to become trending or what's going to become a hot button topic. And when you have a social platform, you have to decide, is this a hot button topic I'm going to speak on, or is this a hot button topic I'm going to stay silent on? I think Black Lives Matter, mass shootings, those are kind of two inherently just controversial topics. People don't like talking about guns. People don't like talking about police brutality. It's not, good table etiquette. It's not good first date topics, things like that. But once again, there's ways you can talk about it without making it controversial, still standing your ground, still sharing your opinion. But you really do have to assess like what is the negative and positive impact going to be when you do speak out, for yourself, for the brand, and for the situation. And you have to weigh those pros and cons. For Black Lives Matter, I know a lot of people were like, yeah, I'm going to lose some followers, but I could save a life, so it's totally okay for me to lose followers. And just know a lot of people that lost followers gained a whole bunch of followers, because for every like bigot out there, there's like 5 people that aren't bigots that are willing to follow you to replace those people. So never worry about that. I love this. So speaking of for what's right is always on brand. You just have to figure out how it's on brand for you. Each of us has a different blog, a different social channel, a different business, but there are easy ways for you to integrate this content in. Once again, we had a week where it was overwhelming. We paused everything else, but that doesn't mean the conversation doesn't have to stop. And there's easy ways to like change and shift and get that content back in there. So when we're thinking about crises communication, the first thing you have to do is assess the full situation and how it impacts your personal brand and you. So, when COVID happened, I'm sure a lot of you guys were in the same situation of, you might have had content planned for parties and for going out on boats and for, going on trips internationally. And you had to say, hey, is this big enough? Do I need to stop my content? There were a lot of bloggers that continued to post content during COVID, and they got called out for it. I'm not sure if you guys saw the New York blogger that decided to go on a road trip when New York was on lockdown. She made national news because people thought it was just ignorant of her, selfish of her to put other people in danger. And I don't think she went through all these steps, and she probably could have avoided that, where she could have still gone on her trip but just not posted about it. You have to quickly decide if you need to pause on social media so you don't appear tone deaf, you don't appear like you're unaware of the situation. And this is always best to do while you're doing number one. And I know some people have this hard tension of like, hey, I have brand content that's supposed to go out today. Just know, once again, I work on a brand team. The brand teams are doing the exact same thing you were. The only difference is they had a room full of 20 people. And by room, I mean they had a Zoom meeting full of 20 people because we were still social distancing, as opposed to you just being by yourself. And so if you reached out to a brand, they should have said it's totally okay to pause the branded content, because we have influencer programs and we pause all of our influencer programs. Decide if you need to make a statement, and when and how that message would be best delivered and on what platform. Usually, depending on the crises, it's usually good. The goal should always be 24 to 48 hours once you've learned of whatever happened. That 28 to 48 hour window is like the sweet spot of that gives you enough time that you've paused, you're able to look at other people's social channels. You're able to do some research, look at some, relatable and reliable news stations, and really figure out like how big the situation is, how long it's going to last, and if you need to say something on it. That also gives you enough time to, craft a statement that is thoughtful, and craft a statement that is important to you with accompanying images. Once again, I know some people said they didn't know what to say, but if you use this template, you have about 48 to 72 hours where you can find an image or create an image that's on brand for you that really speaks to what you have to say. So really kind of use that time to put into your own words. That's when you're doing your research, you're looking at other accounts, and you craft that statement. And then you share your message to your audience via your selected channels. One thing that we looked at last week with George Floyd was most of the conversations were biggest on Instagram. Like if you looked on Facebook, you didn't see a lot of the like black squares. You didn't see a lot of the, muted. The same thing with Twitter. So we saw that Instagram was like the hub of this conversation. And so maybe you say, hey, I'm going to like keep my focus on Instagram, but I'm not going to post on Facebook, and I'm not going to post on Twitter. Like that's totally fine to do. But once again, you need to assess that within that first like 24 hours of like, where's my statement going to be most impactful and most relevant to people? And so think about that. So something else you have to do is continue to monitor the situation and how long you need to keep your regular content pause. This usually happens after that first statement has been put out. So this is while you're in that like 72-hour phase of saying, okay, there's protests now. The news is continuing to pick up. I'm seeing more and more people mute. I think I need to continue being muted for a few days. Once again, if you have brand partnerships during this time, I would just follow up with the brand and say, hey, I'm looking at my channels. I know we said we would pause for a few days, but I wanted to know if I could get an extension for 2 to 3 more days. Once again, if they're seeing the same thing you're seeing, it's totally fine to keep paused. I think the biggest thing is communication. And when you're reaching out to these brands to pause your like paid content or whatever the partnership content is, make sure that in your note, you're very clear on, I do not feel comfortable posting right now because of X, Y, and Z. If you were using George Floyd as an example, say, this has emotionally exhausted me. I am very passionate about Black Lives Matter. I don't feel it's appropriate. I value this partnership. However, I do believe we should pause, and I hope you feel the same. Once again, unless they're an asshole brand, they're not going to say no. Monitor your audience's reaction to your response, both positive and negative feedback. If no one's told you this as a blogger, as somebody who's on social media, people are always going to have something negative to say about you, whether they say it on your comments, whether they say it in your DMs, and you have to kind of have thick skin in this. And I think a lot of you guys learned to get thicker skin the last week or so. And you always have to remember, everyone is entitled to their opinions, whether those opinions be good or bad. And people are sometimes just trolls as well. And for that reason, if it is negative feedback that is negative in a constructive way, I think you should listen to that and really learn from it if it's constructive. If it's negative and saying, hey, you posted this, but I was expecting you to do X, Y, and Z, or I didn't think your message was genuine, I was expecting this from you. Yes, it's negative, but they're also giving you some tips and things to change on. Now, if it's just like, this is a bullshit statement, that's something you can ignore. But really don't forego or like not listen to the people that have negative constructive feedback, because you have to remember, some people are not articulate and they don't know how to express their feelings. So they really are trying to genuinely either help you or say that they expected more or better from you, but they might not be able to say it in the best manner. Everyone's not a writer. Everyone's not good with words. So just remember that sometimes that comes from that. But, you know, the biggest thing to take away from this is thick skin. You know, as a brand, you know, I see crazy comments all day, like where people just literally love to troll. Some of it I find comical, and, you know, I print them out and keep them on my desk because I'm like, every now and again, I just need to look at these horrible comments, you know, to giggle, because I'm like, you really took the time out of your day to write this. But other ones I do take and I'm like, okay, this is a genuinely concerned person and I need to understand what I said that made them feel this way. Monitor similar accounts to see how they address the situation. So you will see, you know, if you get some negative constructive feedback, you probably will look at similar accounts and see they got the same feedback, you know, either from the same or from different people. I think that also helps with you not taking it personally when you see like, oh man, X number of other people got the same or similar comments. And it's just a learning experience. You know, a lot of you guys are new to this. You've never had to address something like this. So it's okay to not say the right things, but once again, it goes back to learning. And then, you know, the next thing, which we'll get on the next page, is just, you know, ensuring you're reviewing, you know, relevant information, reliable news sources and organizations to determine next step and additional changes needed. Depending on situations, like sometimes an initial statement of like, oh, you know, goodness, you know, the death of George Floyd rocked me to my core. I'm trying to research, I'm trying to learn, you know, I'm going to be muted for the next few days. And then you follow up with that. I was muted. Here's what I learned. I read this news article. I think this news article would be helpful for you guys. I took some time to process over the last 48 hours. You know, during that time I processed, these are some things that I thought about. Maybe these thought starters will be helpful for you. Once again, still speaking on the situation, updating your statement, showing that you took those action steps, still encouraging people to take those action steps as well. But that really is a super important piece of this. Once again, assess if you need to update your statement. You know, unless you just feel like you totally just fudged up, really don't delete your post or your comment or whatever it was, unless once again you were just totally tone deaf and you just missed the mark. You know, if you have 50 comments and 49 out of the 50 are like negative, you may be fudged up. If you have 50 comments and 8 of them are negative, just leave the post up and leave those negative comments up. And once again, if they're not saying anything that is super hurtful, they're not attacking you personally, they're not saying anything that is attacking other people, don't delete those comments. It shows you as a bigger person and as a brand to allow negative feedback. You know, we have a policy, as long as there's no extreme profanity, they're not attacking any racial, ethnic, you know, sexual orientation groups or threatening us or our lives or anything like that, we leave up the negative comments. Because once again, we read them, we take them in if we need to, and people are entitled to their opinion. Social media is public. So just, if it's not bad, that horrible, just leave it up. And then once again, if you feel like you kind of fudged up, but not enough to delete it, that's when you go back with that statement of like, hey guys, so I made a statement 2 days ago. I got some feedback via DMs, via my social public feed. And during that time, I decided to see what you guys thought was wrong. I talked to some friends, I read some articles, I see where I've made a misstep. And here is what I've learned since then, and here is what I'm going to try to do better in the future on. You know, once again, as a brand owner, it's really important for you to show growth. I don't care how big the brand is, how small your blog is, everyone messes up. Once again, I will send you a list of huge multi-million-dollar, billion-dollar companies that fudged up this week. And they learned their lesson, and they learned their lesson the hard way, but everyone has a misstep and it's totally okay. It's just owning your misstep and learning from your misstep. And then once again, Determine if the crisis is a long-term or short-term crisis. COVID's a great example again. We're in this for the long haul for COVID, so, when you go back to thinking about traveling again, even as an influencer, you can live your life however you want to live your life. But once again, people are entitled to their opinions. If you're traveling like without a mask on and people call you out for not having the mask on, you open yourself up to that criticism, and you have to be able to take in that criticism. Same thing for Black Lives Matter. This is a long-term crisis that's going to keep going on. And so you have to determine when you are going to turn back on your regularly scheduled content and how long you're going to have this secondary crises content too. For me, for like COVID, I really just try to say like, oh, met with a friend today, but we stayed 6 feet apart and we social distance and stuff like that. I'm still nodding to COVID, but I'm not making it my whole content. Same thing with Black Lives Matter. There's some easy things you can do with that. And just keep monitoring. Once again, going back to researching, looking at other things that people are doing, monitor all those things, but ultimately you have to decide for yourself when it's right for you to turn back on your content, and when it's right for you to, continue or pause this secondary messaging that you have. Super important. So when you turn back on your content, don't just like flip the switch and turn it back on. You have to assess if the content that you had scheduled or planning to schedule is going to contradict any statements, any promises you made during this time. And if it does, and you have the ability to reassess, do that. Same thing with your brand partnerships. Once again, these brands are going through the same thing. So if you have a brand partnership that was paused and you feel like something might not be the right statement, just say, hey, is it okay if we change X, Y, and Z? Or I would like to change this image, change this line, because I don't think this line is appropriate anymore. Once again, if it's a good brand, which hopefully you're working with good brands, they'll say okay. And you can do the same for your content. And those are just super easy things that you can do. So I saw this on someone's page and I really love this. A lot of us monetize our blogs. And if we can make our followers purchase makeup and shoes and clothes and take trips, we can easily influence them to do good. It's just whether or not you want to do that. And just remember, doing good, literally signing a petition, it takes like 30 seconds to do. It doesn't really cost them anything unless they make a donation. It really just costs them their time, their attention, their empathy, and their understanding. And those are things that can easily be given. So just remember that when you're thinking about like, oh man, should I change this post or should I not? Like, once again, like as an influencer, as a blogger, people care about your opinion. And I know some of you are like, well, I don't know if they care about my opinion because I'm a fashion blogger on Black Lives Matter. You're still a human being. Life is more than a single thing of, fashion or food or travel or whatever it may be. People do understand you're a real person. And if they don't understand that you're a real person, show them you're a real person, that you care about things. And, you always have to sometimes remind people, especially certain followers, that yeah, I post about certain things, but you don't see all aspects of my life. You don't know the complexity of me as a human being. And once again, going back to being vulnerable, it's okay to show those people that you're complex. You care about different things, you have different experiences, or even that you're open to learning different things, and having different experiences. That is totally fine with people. So once again, super important, whenever you start talking about, social good, you're going to lose followers. You do this every day. I'm sure all of us check our analytics. You'll see a gain of 8 and you're like, oh my God, I gained 8 followers, but wait, why am I still at the same number? It's because 8 people also unfollowed you for no reason. It happens every day. But just remember, you're sacrificing some followers for, saving a life. And the thing to remember, there's so many of you guys in here, and there's other people that aren't in here. If you feel like you've lost followers, know that there's other people that are just like you that you can have follow you, and you can follow them as well. Like, just band together and say, okay, I lost 20 followers this week because they hated that I posted about Black Lives Matter. There are more than 20 of you guys in here. You can totally gain those followers back really easily and support each other. You know, the same way we support each other through, you know, pods and giveaways and things like that. Just know that there's people out there where if you feel alone, you feel like you don't know what to say, there's people that will support you, and that will help you grow your following back. So never feel like you're sacrificing money or followers by saying what's right and doing what's right, because there's other people that are out there doing the same that would be more than happy to support you, and you can support them as well. So never forget that. So going into your brand, you know, your brand, you as the brand, you are the brand. And so whatever you care about, whatever you're passionate about, you know, some of us have super focused blogs, which is totally fine. Everyone's not a lifestyle blogger. Everyone does not feel comfortable sharing every aspect of your life. But I always say every brand evolves. Think of even the biggest brands out there. They change their logos, you know, they change their marketing campaigns, they change their inventory, you know, they evolve, and you as a human, you evolve too. You go through life experiences, you get married, you have kids, you lose loved ones, you buy a new house, you know, there's all different positives and negatives in our lives that change who we are. And it's okay to show those changes through your brand. And then once again, if you just, you know, came upon Black Lives Matter and you're just now starting to get into this movement, don't feel like it's not your place to talk about it, because it can become a part of who you are, of like, I've learned so much, I care so much now, this is something I want to continue doing. That is fine. Let people know that you have evolved, that you have grown, your brand has grown, and that is most of the time going to be taken positively by most people, especially followers that just genuinely care about you, and care about what you have to say and what you're doing. You know, so reshape your brand, to include social good and to be civic minded. So when I say social good, this is really using your platform to make a difference. You know, once again, if you can move product and inventory for brands, you can use your platform for social good, and you can be civic minded, which is, hey guys, you know, just so you know, like for me, I'm like, I do all these things. I'm from Nashville. I love to travel. I love style. But did you know I'm Black too? And I care about Black Lives Matter. That's totally fine to like integrate into your content too. You just have to think about how it's right for you to do that. You know, I love this quote. It's from the Chief Responsibility Officer at Dell. But having a greater purpose and embedding it into the DNA of your business is critical to developing deeper relationships with customers in an age when creating meaningful connections is getting harder and harder. If you look at all the brands that spoke out, you may never have seen, because some companies don't promote it, which I think, once again, I think we're in a new era where things have changed. If you look on their website, everyone has a corporate responsibility page on their website. It might not be front and center where the clothes and the beauty products and all the other stuff is, but it's there. And you can do the same thing for your brand, because think about where you spend your dollars. Like whenever you see a company, you know, whether it's Tom's and they give a pair of shoes when you buy a shoes, whether it's, you know, Target that supports, you know, teachers doing back to school. Most people love to give their money to brands and companies that have some kind of social good component to them. And I don't think blogs, and I don't think, you know, social influencer businesses are any different. You just have to figure out what that social good for you looks like. And once again, you know, going back to you or your blog, you or your brand, you know, people want to know that you're a human. They want to know that you care about, you know, things other than fashion and style and things like that. Because once again, a lot of us get called out for being superficial and, only seeming like we're one dimension and not showing more of our lives, more of ourselves. And so I kind of take that as a challenge of, okay, you called me superficial. You said I only care about fashion. Well, guess what? I actually care about some other things, and here are those other things that I care about, and really get them to care as well. Like, there's so many great companies, and more companies are going to start jumping on the bandwagon, which is great, that, they give back to these great causes. And so when you're looking at your brand partnerships, look for companies that align to your, values, that align to what you care about. So even when you're promoting, these businesses, you're also promoting something that's good, you're giving back, and it's more feel good for you. And so, there is, once again, hundreds of companies this week that committed to doing more with Black Lives Matter, promoting to more Black small businesses, promoting more small Black businesses. They're probably companies that you either have worked with or want to work with as a blogger. And so for that reason, go pitch them, go work with them, because once again, you can still promote, hey, I'm working with Target, but also, when you purchase during this month, Target's giving 20% to Black teachers, or hey, I'm working with Tom and all of their additional shoes are going to kids in predominantly Black neighborhoods, to make sure they have new shoes for the school year. Whatever it may be, those are simple, easy things that you can change, shift, and do. This is what we just talked about, like, align your brand. Once again, I think you also need to be careful during this time. Like I said, there are some brands that fudged up. They fudged up good, and, they might not recover immediately. And so once again, if Black Lives Matter, whatever your social issue is truly something important to you, I would be careful and research that company and make sure that they said the right thing, are doing the right thing, and that you will not get any negative feedback for working with them, which is super important, because, you never want to promote a company that basically is the antithesis of, what you stand for. For example, like Papa John's reached out to me, and the campaign was paused during all of this. And I was like, oh man, like, should I work with Papa John's? Their CEO was super racist like a few years ago, but then he got fired. The new CEO is great. They made all these changes. The company has had an overhaul. They're working with more Black influencers, working with more Black managers, things like that. So I felt comfortable doing that because they made a change years ago and have kept that change over the past few years. So I felt comfortable doing that. Now there's some other brands where I'm like, probably wouldn't feel as comfortable. So just keep that in your mind as you're moving forward over the next year. Because once again, people remember things. Screenshots don't die. Links don't die on the website. Google is forever. You just don't want to tarnish your brand by aligning yourself with a brand that has a bad reputation from everything that's going on. That's not something you want to do. Once again, brand partners are asking themselves the same questions right now. A lot of people were like, when or how, or even should I go back to posting my regular content right now? You have to define what your new norm is. For me, I'm going to make it a point, just because of who I am, the experiences I've lived and the positive feedback that I've received, of making this part of my ongoing content. Is it going to be every day? No. For me, it's personally not going to be every day because, as a Black woman, it's exhausting. But I do see the power in me influencing and sharing these stories and, the feedback that I've received. So it is going to be ongoing, but I haven't fully decided what that is for me. I think it's probably going to be 2 to 3 times a week. Because once again, there's just days when I just want to be like sitting on the patio, listening to some music, drinking a drink, and that's all I want to share on social. And that's totally fine. But you're never not going to see me post about Black Lives Matter again, because it's very important to who I am. So once again, just define what your new norm looks like, in this new situation. And that really is just dependent upon you, your content, the schedule that you have, and the schedule that you keep. Once again, so plan, create, and share your civic-minded content as you do with any other content. You need to create a strategy that makes it clear to your followers, this is not a trend, this was not for a week, this is not for June, this is ongoing, this is now, and this is forever. You know, because you might have gained some followers this week that are expecting those conversations to continue. And then once again, going back to your influence, you know, using the Ahmad example again, just think once again, if this does happen, which it will, you know, how you can use your platform once again to spread that knowledge, have people sign a petition, you know, have people, you know, do whatever it is you need them to do, donate, things like that. Just plan it into your strategy. So whatever your brand strategy is, and if you don't have one, this is the perfect time to create one. And just create, what does my content strategy look like? What does my normal content, my civic content look like together? And how can I push it out in a way to my followers where it seems authentic, it seems genuine, it's not off-brand, and it's also not off-putting to my followers that I have too. You know, that's something that you really need to buckle down, and I would say probably take like an hour or so to do. You know, get it down on a sheet of paper, write it down on your computer, come back, look at it, and then say, okay, I feel good, I feel comfortable, I've got a path forward, moving forward for all these things. These are just a few content starters. So if you are in fashion, you know, something super easy you can do, work with and highlight Black and minority owned boutiques and clothing companies. I'm sure they would love to get the additional exposure. You know, do a shoot with a Black blogger highlighting similar outfits. I saw someone do this recently. It was super cute. They both wore the same outfit, styled it differently, kind of based on, you know, who they are. Still doing the same content. You're still highlighting boutiques. You're still highlighting outfits, but you're doing it in a way that you're also bringing awareness to minority businesses, and you're also highlighting a Black voice along with that. So that's just something very simple you can do. You know, work with and highlight Black and minority owned beauty and health brands for women and for men. You know, Honey Pot's a great one. Bevel's a great one. It's a shave razor. You know, I know a lot of people, I can't even think, oh yeah, everyone has been posting like the Billy razor. If you haven't been able to work with Billy, go work with Bevel. Honey Pot's basically the equivalent of like Summer's Eve, but it is made by a Black woman. She is distributed in Target. She has a really great story of she didn't feel like those products were made for her or made for other women. And so she created her own. Same thing with food. If you're a food blogger or someone who does lifestyle, get takeout, go dine safely at a Black owned restaurant and share. If that's not something that you've done before, like that's a great way to bring awareness to them. Still staying on content, you're still showing food, but you're just showing different types of food and different types of business owners. If you travel, once you start traveling again, you know, if you go to a Black country or a predominantly Black city, you know, think about highlighting the culture of that city or that country, and talking about, hey, not only did I visit the beach in South Africa, but I also, you know, learned more about apartheid, how that relates to American culture. Once again, still talking about travel, still talking about you had a great time, but letting people know you did some educational things too. You would be really surprised. Once again, we're supposed to be influencers and bloggers and share our experiences. Of people don't think sometimes to do those things. They're not even aware sometimes of Black owned restaurants in their city. And this is just a great opportunity for you to really show like you have influence, bring them new customers, open people's eyes to new experiences in their cities. So these are just a few content thought starters. But once again, you can stay on brand and on topic, but just do a slight tweak. And you know, that slight tweak will make all of the difference, especially for the person that you're highlighting. Something else to think about is opening up your spaces. You know, so next time you do a giveaway, see how ethnically diverse that giveaway is, especially if you're like planning it on your own. If you're in pods, see how racially diverse those pods are, and just think like, how can you change that? Can you invite new women to those spaces so that you can interact with them, you can get to know them, you can learn from them, but also you can support them, they can support you, and you guys can bounce ideas off of each other. Those are just some easy things that you can do. And then something, once again, so like, we started this conversation all because of Black Lives Matter and everything that happens over the past 2 weeks. But there's other issues that, you can think about. Once again, there's so many issues in America: human trafficking, immigrant rights, equal education. It's Pride Month. It's body positivity, girls' leadership, voting rights, domestic violence. Think about all these things. And once again, if you want to diversify what your social good looks like, you being civic minded, let people know that you care about these different, passion points, and you can infuse that into your content in various ways. There's, Women's Rights Month, there's Hispanic Heritage Month, there's Black History Month. There's all these different months, all these different weeks throughout the year. Even if it's like, National Domestic Violence like Awareness Week or something like that, you can like highlight that on your feed. So I don't think this is something that should just stop with Black Lives Matter. Once again, we have these incredible platforms that we have been privileged to grow and to use. And, it's up to us to say, like, what do I want my platform to do? Do I want to influence for good? And do I want to influence for change too? And once again, just define what your civic consistency means to you. So if it's once a week, if it's bi-weekly, once a month, once a quarter, as a brand owner, that's up to you to say what fits right in your brand. But just be consistent, whatever consistency is defined for you. Once again, this is not really like a one and done thing. People want to see authenticity. They want to see truthfulness. They want to see that you were truly passionate about what you post about, you meant what you said. And the best way to do that is really just to follow through. And yeah, so ensure your involvement is seen as authentic and genuine. You continue to post. Once again, this is going to require an ongoing response from people. So just figure out like what your ongoing response looks like. Okay, so this is where we're going to get into some of the challenges I have for you guys. Hopefully, throughout the rest of the year, or once again, whatever that looks like for you guys, you will continue to amplify Black voices on your feed and on your stories. This is a question that you have to ask yourself and, define for yourself, but really it's just, even for me, it's, highlighting other people in other spaces that are POC or that might be part of the LGBTQIA+ community, and me highlighting those people during Pride. So for me, I'm working on some stuff near the end of the month to highlight their stories and highlight their voices, because I want to use my feed to not just talk about myself, but to talk about other people that might be relevant and just shed some light on those other stories as well. So this is just a question for you guys, but we did come up with a challenge, which I hope you guys all take. So 8:46, 8 minutes and 46 seconds. That was the time that George Floyd was being murdered in that video, and he had a knee on his neck. So I would love for you guys, for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, we talked about a lot today. Turn your phone on Do Not Disturb, turn on your timer, and just reflect on the below for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. First of all, it's a long time. It's a very long time to do anything. But think about like the Black men and women and children that have been killed by the police and everyday citizens, but never arrested. So once again, Trayvon Martin, that sparked the Black Lives Matter movement. He was killed just by someone who was in the neighborhood watch, hunted him down and killed him in the streets. Think about how you can be an ally. Think about how you can amplify Black voices on your platform. And then think about what change looks like for you. Once again, small changes, large changes. Just think about all that for like 8 minutes and 46 seconds. Even think about like, how passionate am I about Black Lives Matter? I also listed out some other things that could, integrate into your feed, and think about if you're passionate about those as well, which is totally fine if you are. Once your time is up, because once again, 8 minutes and 46 seconds is a long time, take a breath, take a moment, and then make an action plan. And what your action plan should include: challenge 8 other friends via social media or via text message to do the same thing. Ask them to pause, do not disturb for 8 minutes, 46 seconds, and think about these things. And then on your social channels, just share 4 big things that you will do over the next 6 months to help end systematic racism and support Black Lives Matter. And the 4 things can be spread across something you're going to do at your job, something you're going to do in the influencer industry, or just something you're personally going to do as, I would say as small as reading a book. But for some people, reading a book by a Black author they've never done before, and that's actually a big thing. And big is defined by you. Big can be stopping your, family members from using racist terms at gatherings. You can call out friends when they do racist posts and memes. You can share Black content creators each month, each week, quarterly, whatever that looks like. But basically, tag 8 friends, think of 4 big things to do, and it can be over the next 6 months, because once again, we know we're not all going to become activists overnight. This is new territory for a lot of people. And so you really do have to sit down and think, okay, what can I start out doing small? How can I make those small changes consistent? And once again, make sure my followers, and even to me, I make the promise to keep doing it over the next 6 months. And then hopefully if you last 6 months, that's just going to be an ongoing thing for you for 2021 and hopefully the rest of your life. So I talked a lot. Do you guys, I do see someone just put something in the chat. Okay, someone said, should we refrain from certain hashtags still, such as BLM, Black Lives Matter? No. If you are posting directly about Black Lives Matter, then use those hashtags. Now, if you are saying, let me try to think of an example that I've seen. If you're trying to say, we're all in this together, I love everyone, and then do hashtag Black Lives Matter, probably don't want to use the Black Lives Matter hashtag. Now, if you're saying, I read an article today that taught me so much about the movement, I'm really trying to learn, how to be, more positive and a better ally, hashtag Black Lives Matter, that is applicable and that makes sense. Once again, something you want to be careful of is not seeming like you're being opportunistic or not seem like you are just doing it to do it. If the content is not related to Black Lives Matter, don't use the hashtag. So just be very careful about that. Make sure what you're saying is applicable and relevant. And if it's not, you can just use some other hashtag and people will kind of know what you're talking about. But going back to, you have to directly address the situation. And if you don't use the hashtag. I'm a brand owner who is white. One of my fears is coming off like I'm pandering. Any tips for showing that I'm genuine? So I think what we just talked about right now, it's consistency. I've seen so many white people get called out, and not even white people. I've seen Asian bloggers. I have seen business owners like you get called out too, and people basically are calling them out because they're like, one, you never posted on your feed. Is it really that important to you? Two, people are like, oh my God, I'm so glad that you're posting and you made a donation. But if I come back to your feed on July 8th, am I never gonna see anything? Is the highlight gone? Did you archive the Black square? Did you never amplify a Black voice again? Pandering is only pandering if you do it for that time, and once the conversation dies down, you never speak about it again. Being genuine is continuous. things that you can do. And once again, it's just like losing weight. It's just like any habit that you're trying to form. You know, you have to start small, but sometimes you also have to like have people hold you accountable. Where for me, I have told my friends I'm trying to lose my quarantine 15. I'm like, if you see me eating, you know, Cheez-Its, because I love Cheez-Its, call me out, because I said I wasn't going to eat Cheez-Its anymore. If you see that I haven't worked out in 3 days, call me out, because I said I was going to work out every day, even if it was walking. If you, once again, do this challenge and you post the things that you're going to do, it allows people to hold you accountable, and it allows you to hold yourself accountable. So just once again, figure out what your consistency looks like. You know, as a, you know, brand owner, figure out how you can showcase more Black people in your feed, whether that be through models, whether that be sharing other brands that are like, you know, work with your brands, just things like that. But basically, it's just all about keeping the conversation going, because once again, we're going to be here in a couple weeks, a couple months. We know it's going to happen. And they want to know, when it happens again, are you going to have the same energy that you had for George Floyd when we're not in COVID-19? That was your question 2. What are some organizations you recommend donating to monthly? So NAACP is a really great one. Every city has a local chapter, so you can donate to your local chapter. You know, one thing that's like super important when it comes to like police, and just issues in your community, it's always at the local level. So I think finding your either local Black Lives Matter chapter or your local NAACP chapter is super important, because they're going to be on the ground in your cities doing the work. And that's where you're going to see the changes at the local level. Also, I'm trying to think, I can send some more. I'm going to send an email with like a whole bunch of links for you guys and things to read. But those are the 2 best ones that I think of, because I think those are consistently the ones that do the most work. As a lifestyle, fashion, body positivity influencer, my content is mostly exclusive photos of myself. When I try to incorporate other types of content, my audience seems less engaged, which that happens, yep. What are some ways to diversify my content in a way that interests my audience without looking like I'm centering myself in a subject like Black Lives Matter? Like I said, I think something that's good, if you, I'm assuming you're probably a white blogger, if that's correct. So if you're about body positivity, like for example, I'll use a group here. So Nashville Curves, they highlight Black, white, other bloggers that are more plus size and come in all different shapes, and they do like swimsuit photo shoots and kind of highlight women in things that normally plus size women would be criticized for wearing. And so once again, planning out your content, you know, if you have like a photo shoot coming up in July, like think about, hey, how can I work with another blogger to get her in on my photo shoot? Or, you know, how can I even use a picture of me, but on the next few tiles are other body positivity, Black women, POC women that are behind me. You're still showing your feed first and your feed still being consistent, but you still have that message of the other women tagged to give them some light. Or you are saying like swipe to see. I'm not gonna lie, I did that on my feed because the same thing happens to me. I literally know that people just like to see my face. Even when I like turn my face to the side, my pictures don't perform as well. And so for me, it was like, I'm gonna do what performs well because I wanna get the message out. And I think once again, it goes back to the words that you say. You know, I saw something funny on Twitter where someone was like, 15 reasons, it was an actor, he was like, 15 reasons I like turned down the role of Dumbledore, read this Google Doc. And then the Google Doc was like, now that I have your attention, actually this is like 15 ways you can help Black Lives Matter. And people were just like, okay, I see what you did there, but that's something you can do of like, hey guys, like today I had an iced coffee, I'm gonna tell you the recipe for my iced coffee. And then you're like, actually the recipe is Black Lives Matter, let's talk about that. Like, get people's attention and then talk about what's important. That's totally fine to do. Any other questions? I love these questions, so keep them coming. Oh, you're welcome. Are there any other questions? Oh, awesome. You guys are welcome. Oh, you guys are welcome. Okay, I just have two more things. And if you do have any more questions, feel free to put them in here as I go through them. Let me make sure I don't miss these questions. Let's see, I have to get back in here. So we have another session coming up. It is going to be a free session. So I think one thing that happened, once again, a lot of people were calling out brands as they should have over the last few weeks. So we're gonna have another free conversation on Tuesday just about inequalities in the influencer industry. We're gonna focus on, racial inclusion, but also just plus size inclusion, because even before all this happened, I had a lot of plus size bloggers from, whether they be Black or whether they be white, just talk about how brands wouldn't work with them, or wouldn't even give them free clothes, if you will. And there's just a lot of other things, including equal pay, that go on. And once again, I think people felt empowered last week to call out these brands. And I'll use Pink Lily as an example, and I'll use Pink Lily as an example because I worked with them. But they got called out hard and they reached out to me and they were like, what can we do? And I sent them some very long, detailed steps about what they could do. But, one of the things I definitely was like, these people aren't lying on any of these brands. They're also not, trying to be mean when they say these things. People were genuinely hurt because, not seeing yourself as a woman on people's feed and not feeling like you're valued because you look different, your body is different, because you're gay, whatever that might be, it's not okay. And I love that people have been calling out these brands, and I want to keep the conversation going because they just need to do better. We live in a world now where, like, you want little girls to see plus size people on pages. You want little girls that are Black to see other brown girls on their pages. Same thing with guys. You want to see queer people on your pages too. So I think it's an important conversation. Like, I think all of us have the opportunity, once again, as influencers, to literally say, like, what we want this influencer industry to be, which is more inclusive. And the brands are in a sticky situation where they cannot ignore it now. So I'm like, let's go, girls. Like, let's all band together. Let's actually see some change. So these feeds look a little bit more diverse, even from like age. I know some brands that won't post older women too, which is like, they only post certain older women, which is just crazy. But there's a lot of things I think that we can change. And so that's what we're going to talk about, getting some stories from different people as well. And I'm just excited to have that conversation, just to open our eyes to like everything that's been going on in the influencer industry. How do you feel about photos from protests? Is it appropriate to selfie there? Is that performative? That's a good question. I will give my personal opinion and then I'll give my brand opinion. My personal opinion is you can do it if your sign is not problematic. I have seen so many people that have had problematic signs, and excuse my language, but this is the example I'm going to use. Someone was like, because I love Black dick, I'm here for Black Lives Matter. And that was their post. And I'm just like, girl, now out of all the things you could have said, that was the sign you chose, and that was the picture you chose to post. Like, so if you're gonna do that, don't do that. Now, if you have something that is, you know, still funny or provocative, but doesn't exploit Black people, Black men, I think that's okay. Because once again, some people need permission to participate almost, you know, especially as you guys as being bloggers and influencers, when they see, oh man, she went out with a mask on and she protested. I've been on the fence about if I should go protest. They're like, I feel like I can comfortably go march now. Or if they see you with the sign in front of a Black business, they're like, I didn't know if I should support or what I should do. It kind of gives them permission to do it. So I think that's okay. Just once again, like, just be careful. Don't do any of the Black dick signs, but all the other signs are totally good. Another question. Oh, okay, thank you. They said thank you. But yeah, I think you're okay, but just don't be that person that's seeking attention. Don't do that. You know, another thing I've seen is a lot of TikTok videos. And you know, everyone's trying to get TikTok famous right now. And I've seen some people that have genuinely just shared, like, this is how I feel. I have Black, you know, friends and coworkers and blah, blah, blah. And then I've seen some people that have just gone over the top. Like this, she was, I think Russian, but she essentially like painted one of her hands brown. She had her white hand. And in the video, she brought her hands together and was like, we should all be one. And we were all kind of like, girl, why didn't you just get a Black person to like hold your hand? So just, you know, think about it. And if you feel like it could be controversial, you know, usually go with your gut feeling and don't do it. But once again, if you're genuine and you're just trying to bring awareness, then it's totally okay to do, for sure. I'll keep going. And then if you guys still have any other questions, oh yeah, I think this is the last thing I had. Yes, I hope you guys like this. I hope you guys learned something. I'm gonna send out, like I said, some links. I'm gonna send out this deck if you wanna go through it, because I know we went through a lot. But really, like, feel free to email me questions once I send out that deck if you didn't feel comfortable sharing them here. But really, I just hope that you guys continue on this journey. I hope you learned something that was helpful for you. And whether it's Black Lives Matter or one of those other issues I talked about, like, I hope you feel empowered to use your platform to speak up, especially if it's something that you truly care about. And, you know, just the last thing I'll reiterate to you guys, no matter what you do, how good you do it, how great you do it, people are going to criticize and have something negative to say. We all know what a troll is. Where literally they're just unhappy, negative people that their only joy is being negative. And so you have to ignore those people and keep doing what you're doing. And just remember, every time you lose a follower because they don't like what you said about Black Lives Matter or whatever the other issue is, know that there's other people that are willing to support you, and they will support you. They will find you. So just focus on those people. Don't focus on the people that, you know, say negative things and that you lose. All right. Well, that's all I have to say. I'm so glad you were all here. What is the best way to support you and Blogger Exchange? Follow me. No, follow Blogger Exchange. You don't have to follow me personally. But yes, follow Blogger Exchange. Like I said, we have another workshop that's coming up on Tuesday. Share that in your feed. If you liked this and you feel like you learned something, tell people about it. So, you know, the reason I did this for free and the one on Tuesday is for free, for me, I want as many people to learn and benefit, and anyone who was hesitant to post, I don't want them to be hesitant to post. So I want you guys, if you feel like it was beneficial, please share it. I'm happy to send anyone this deck. All they have to do is send me their email. I can answer questions. I'm totally happy to do that. For me, it's just about like getting as many people as I can to learn this and feel comfortable talking about it. You guys are welcome. Thank you for all the thanks. I appreciate it. All right, I think we were supposed to go to 8:30. I feel good. I usually talk a long time, but I feel like I did really good tonight. I'm proud of myself. All right, you guys have a good night. I will email this tomorrow. I'm gonna go drink some wine because I had a long day at work. Yes. But you guys all have a good night, and thank you so much for stopping in.